He broke this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. At 7:42 a.m. on November 10, 2025, a Ukrainian MiG-29 ripped across the Severky Donets River at an altitude of just 150 meters, heading straight toward the Hull Mifka Dam, the Russian supply route that moves more than 9,000 tons of ammunition and fuel every week. Although the pilot had used the terrain to stay hidden until this point, that protection was about to vanish. Unbeknownst to him, 3 Russian radar systems had already locked onto the target, forming what analysts call a 0% escape zone. At 38 kilometers out, the S-400's tracking radar locked the MiG instantly. The Bu-M3 and Tuar-M2 also initiated launch procedures. Mechanical clattering echoed across their batteries. 3 overlapping arcs of fire wove together, creating a death net every pilot knows too well. No one survives once caught inside it. Could a single jet destroy the backbone of Russia's war machine? Or would Donetsk's billion-dollar air defense web turn the pilot into dust? Let's uncover the truth. At 7:42 a.m. on November 10, 2025, the Seversky Donets Valley looked calm enough to fool anyone except the pilot of the Ukrainian MiG-29, slicing through it at 910 kilometers per hour and just 62 feet above the riverbed. Dawnlight crawled across the frozen water like a thin blade, but nothing about this flight was gentle. Every second he stayed low, shaved off radar exposure. Every meter gained meant a cleaner shot at the target that almost no one outside Ukraine even knew existed. The whole Mifka crossing dam. The structure Russia had quietly turned into a 24-hour military highway, a highway paved with fear. For the past 76 days, Russian forces had forced Ukrainian civilian truck drivers to haul ammunition across the top of the dam. Men who woke up thinking they were moving grain or fuel and instead became human shields without consent. Satellite images revealed something even darker. An average of 118 Russian military supply vehicles crossed that narrow concrete span every sunrise. And at peak hours, the entire line stretched nearly 1.2 kilometers. But then came the shocking discovery. One tiny opportunity, a gift wrapped in seconds. At 7:43 a.m., a Li-100 reconnaissance drone detected something nearly impossible. A 4-minute window with 0 civilian vehicles on the dam. Not one truck, not one bus, not one forced driver. A gap that hadn't happened in over 2 months, and likely wouldn't happen again until someone died. It was now or never. Inside the cockpit, the pilot's oxygen mask pressed hard against his face as he scanned the valley walls. Radar shadows covered him like armor. Once he climbed out of this natural trench, that armor would vanish. 3 Russian air defense systems were already awake. All they needed was one mistake. He pushed the throttle forward, closing in on the moment that would decide everything. Whether the dam would stand, or whether thousands of Russians would wake to find their lifeline erased from the map. By 7:49 a.m., the MiG-29 was only 26 kilometers from Holmedam, and, the quiet shelter of the Severky Donets Valley was beginning to fade behind him like a closing door. The pilot could feel it in the vibration of the airframe, in the shifting tone of the SPO-15 receiver, and in the way the sunlight hit the cockpit canopy. Everything felt too bright, too open, honestly, just way too exposed. Ahead lay nothing but flat farmland and the cold mathematical precision of Russian air defenses, and those defenses were already watching. To the northeast, an S-400 battalion at Novorodsky began sweeping the sky with its 91N6 Big Bird radar, which, is capable of detecting a fighter at 540 kilometers. To the south, a Tuar-M2 battery hummed to life, its search array rotating at 40 revolutions per minute, fast enough to refresh a firing solution every 0.6 seconds. And to the east, Hidden among burned tree lines, a Buck M3 launcher warmed its guidance computer. Each missile inside was valued at over $2.5 million. 3 systems, 3 angles, 1 aircraft. The pilot checked his fuel gauge, 2,520 kilograms remaining. On paper, that meant he had 19 minutes before he'd be gliding home on prayer alone. But, as we know, combat never respected paper numbers. Every sharp turn, every second of afterburner, every dive would carve that fuel margin down like an axe. At this altitude, the RD-33 engines were burning fuel 9 times faster than at cruising height. His valley protection would end in 90 seconds. Then radar would see everything. Then missiles could fly. The SPO-15 began pulsing faster, slow beeps turning into quickened stabs of electronic warning. The sound felt like someone knocking on the cockpit from the outside, harder each time. Russian operators were scanning, narrowing, focusing. The noose was tightening with mechanical patience, and the MiG was flying straight toward its center. At 7:56 a.m., the MiG-29 reached the final rise of the valley. Ahead of him, the ground leveled out into an open plain, flat, unforgiving, and watched by more Russian sensors than any other 8-kilometer stretch in Donetsk. The moment he crossed that invisible threshold, the war changed instantly. The SPO-15 didn't warn him. It screamed. The soft pulses from minutes earlier erupted into a chaotic storm of overlapping tones, as if someone had thrown a bucket of marbles into a metal drum. 6 distinct radar signatures hit the aircraft at once. The S-400's 92 N6 gravestone radar locked him at 38 kilometers, transitioning from a searching spotlight to a focused laser of electromagnetic pressure. The TOR-M2, now a mere 7.88 kilometers south, tracked him with a refresh rate fast enough to guide 2 missiles simultaneously, and the BM-3, silent until now, lit up like a flare in the eastern tree line. Every operator saw the same thing at the same moment. A Ukrainian fighter, low, fast, exposed, and exactly where they wanted him. The pilot had less than 8 seconds to act. He snapped the MiG onto its left wingtip, performing a knife-edge turn just meters above the frozen soil. At this angle, any miscalculation meant plowing into the ground at 238 meters per second. But the maneuver briefly broke the S-400's Doppler lock, his relative speed momentarily matching the earth beneath him. One threat delayed, another erupted. The TOR-M2's guidance radar spiked to maximum intensity as its crew prepared to launch. The pilot shoved the stick forward and dropped from 180 meters to just 48 in 2 seconds, so close to the terrain that branches blurred past the canopy like black spears. He punched both chaff dispensers, 120 bundles of X-band fibers, 140 bundles of K-band micro-cut strips. A metallic cloud exploded behind him, blooming into a false target the size of a sports stadium. For a heartbeat, the TOR-M2 lost him. Then it found him again, then it lost him again. He triggered the SPS-141 ECM pod. A Phantom MiG appeared on Russian screens, brighter, cleaner, easier to track. The TOR-M2 followed the Ghost without hesitation. Its targeting computer fooled into chasing a plane that didn't exist. But the S-400 was not fooled. A new lock tone pierced his headset. Steady, continuous, fatal. The fire control system had reacquired him. The pilot knew what that meant. Missiles were seconds from launch. He slammed the throttles forward. Afterburners ignited, orange fire trailed 6 meters behind him, and then he did the unthinkable. He pulled straight up into a 90-degree vertical climb, rocketing from 50 meters to nearly 5,000 in 19 seconds, forcing all 3 Russian systems to recalculate at once. Their computers weren't built for insanity, and this maneuver was exactly that. 3 missile systems, 3 crews, 3 radars, all now battling not just a fighter jet, but a pilot who refused to fly like a sane man. At 7:58 a.m., the MiG-29 pierced through a thin veil of clouds at 5,200 meters, high enough to expose him to every Russian radar and donut, but exactly where he needed to be. The vertical climb had drained 410 kilograms of fuel in under 20 seconds and pushed